With the exception of some cities like Chicago and Baltimore, crime across the country has been falling in recent years. But New York City is on track for one of its safest years in more than 6 decades, especially in terms of murders. There were 286 murders in the 5 boroughs as of yesterday, compared to 329 at the same time last year. The record low for a full year was in 2014 with 333 murders. In fact, crime has fallen in all major felony categories, including rape, assault, burglary, and robbery in New York. As of Sunday, there were just under 95,000 incidents. That's well below the previous record low set last year of more than 101,000. This in a city of 8.5 million people.
Amazing.
Joining us now is MSNBC chief legal correspondent and host of The Beat on MSNBC, Ari Melber. The MSNBC legal unit is out this morning with a new report on police fatalities by gunfire in the line of duty this year. Ari, good morning. Good to see you. What'd you find?
Good morning. This is a report we do at the end of every year to look at every officer who's killed in the line of duty and speak with their families. Diana Marinaccio and I in our legal unit have done that, and we'll show you that what we're seeing this year is fewer officers dying by gunfire. 44 killed so far in 2017. There was that spike last year that you see, 66. This is a return to a number we've seen more frequently in the 40s there. That's the 2015 number. The ambush attacks, which had spiked, which are a huge problem because law enforcement sources, they reflect a kind of collective antipathy. That also falling, which a lot of folks, of course, see as good news, down to 8 this past year. There was that spike all the way up to 21 the previous year. I can show you that Law Enforcement Memorial Fund does this tracking, and we work with them on this account. And I could show you some of the photos that they've gathered of all these different people and families. These are the faces of officers around the country. Obviously, looks like the whole country in terms of the great range, men, women, people from all places and all walks of life who have given their lives in service. And we spoke to many of them, and I'll just share a couple of the stories because that's really what this is about. There was a Detective Mia Sotis Familia. She was an NYPD officer who was shot in the head on duty this year in what looked like a targeted attack. We spoke to her sister, Mercedes. She said, look, behind that badge, underneath that blue, they're human beings. They're people that have families. And she emphasized to us that while she wants officers to respect citizens, one thing that she was thinking about in honoring her sister's service was how important it is to respect the police, something she feels at times doesn't happen. Another person we spoke to was Stephen Ballard's wife, Louise Cummings, now widow. She said that she feels, in terms of how she's come to peace with this at the end of this year, he needed to die and be a hero for all. And that's a theme on the human side of this. A lot of the families, widows and survivors, talked about how they were making sense of this tremendous loss by thinking about the heroism and the service of their family members.
I've gotten to know some of the NYPD families of the fallen, and I don't think most of us think fully about what happens when an officer says goodbye to his family or her family every morning. It's a kiss on the way out the door, but that family, it could be the last kiss because they're going out in harm's way. It's the same feeling a family has when they send a man or woman onto a cargo plane to go to Afghanistan or Iraq. You're not sure 100% whether or not that person's coming back. So I'm glad you brought the human element into this. So the 44 officer deaths in 2017, that's a return to a more normal number, in that 2016 was just an elevated number.
2016 looks like an elevated year, and as
what caused that spike? It was a lot higher.
It was higher, and the ambush attacks were part of that. And in 2016, there were several group ambush attacks where multiple officers were sort of killed and mowed down by one individual. And so when we talk to the law enforcement community, they're very conscious of that. We've had years of coverage of allegations of police brutality and misconduct, and there have been some cases that have proven that. And yet in the community, what we hear at the end of the year, and this is true both years, although the fatalities on ambushes are down, is that feeling of being under attack, of worrying about the collective views of law enforcement. Another story, since you mentioned the thinking about the officers' families you've spoken to, Michael Middlebrook's wife, Adrian, was telling us how she still waits for him to return home. That she thinks about the time of day that's the end of his shift, and then has to recall he's not coming home.
Yeah, it's a good time of year to thank again the officers who wear the badge and step out of their homes every day to protect the rest of us, and again in New York City are doing a job that can only be described as extraordinary, remarkable. When
Right.
you see only 286 murders in a city of 8.5 million people, it's incredible.
And you're putting your finger on where it all ties together. We're seeing these falling crime rates in many parts of the country because, in part, of the great work that the officers are doing.
Yeah.